at times like this, you just want to troubleshoot the entire value chain to see where the issues are, how we can come up with quick solutions, and more importantly, sustainable solutions to these challenges. Top on that list today, naturally, will be fuel scarcity. So we're turning our attention to another part of that sector entirely, the refining sector. Because at the heart of this is supply of products, and you need the refineries working at different levels so we can have that energy security we've talked about. On the show this morning, we're joined by Mr. Momo Oyarikwa, who is the chairman, Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria, CORAN, also chairman, OPAC Refinery. Welcome to the morning brief, Mr. Oyarikwa.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Oh, well, queuing for petrol, actually. I think that would be the natural response from Nigerians, particularly if you're in areas where there's scarcity, filling stations are locked. And the NNPCL had said that this is as a result of logistics issues. So we know that we import our petrol. That could mean a lot of things. It's either they're not getting the product, or there's some issue with the supply chain. I mean, the list is endless, but it points to one certain thing. If we had our refineries working optimally here in Nigeria, they will not be in this situation. I know you have clamored for some things, getting products, not getting them in dollars and the rest. How far have we come, particularly for modular refineries in Nigeria, such that we can look to them and say, maybe you might be the solution to our challenges?
Yeah, thank you. I think we're gradually making progress from where we've been to where we are today. I think huge progress has been made, but the problem has not been solved. I've been advocating and I've been saying that what's the purpose of crude oil anywhere in the world? I've always said that the only reason why crude oil is extracted is for crude oil to go to refineries. There is nothing else you would do with crude oil. And the question I've always asked also is, why can't we make refineries work in Nigeria? I mean, what led us into this, what we call midstream in Nigeria, which is partly refining, is that as private sector players, we felt that the private sector could take a hold of that space in the oil and gas industry and make it work. And yes, a whole lot of us, we have come into that space. I think plus Dangote refinery, we should be about 5 refineries that are currently working in Nigeria operational. But are we there yet? The answer is no, we're not there. Specifically with the modular refineries that you have mentioned, can modular refineries produce PMS? Yes, we can. But like I've said in other forums, the modular refineries, they need to be incentivized. A whole lot of us have gone into that space, mostly on the modular space. We have installed our refinery. We are currently distilling the primary products you can get from crude, but we need to go into secondary cracking. I think almost all the refineries that are currently working in Nigeria today, including the Dangote one, they are currently all doing primary refining. That's why you see what we are producing is just kerosene, gas oil, which is popularly called diesel in Nigeria, fuel oil, and naphtha. And for us to go into the secondary distillation, which is the most professional aspect of it, the modular refinery requires support, because the reformer that will enable us to produce other constituents of the crude, it's very expensive. Some of us will require up to like $100 million to invest in that. And for me, I think that will be the solution to solving some of the fuel scarcity that we have in Nigeria. As an association, what we have been saying is that we want to try to make Nigeria a net exporter of petroleum products, rather to be an importer of Nigeria product, of petroleum products, sorry.
I know that the association is requesting a sort of intervention from the federal government to enable modular refineries have a refining capacity to the extent that they are not just producing those immediate byproducts, but also petrol as well. I wonder what the disposition of the federal government is to that. But speak to this as well. The fact that crude oil is often not available to members of your association, the modular refineries, and even where they are, the producers of the crude oil demand that you pay in forex?
Okay, thank you for that. Recently, I think NUPRC has been doing a lot, has been trying to bring the producers of crude oil and the refiners together. We've had a series of meetings, and I currently think there is a framework which we are hoping to sign, and perhaps all of these are being derived from the PIA and what we call the DCSO, which is the domestic crude obligation. We also have seen in some of the meetings we have had with NUPRC some form of pushback from the producers not wanting to actually support the domestic crude obligation, which we totally think is wrong, because the only reason most of them are doing that is to export this crude oil and earn FX. And what we have said as mostly modular refinery, it might probably be different with Dangote for obvious reasons, because it can export. Most of the modular refineries are producing into the local market. And when you produce into the local market, the implication of that is you will be earning 100% Naira. And if you earn 100% Naira, and you are buying crude in US dollars from the feedstock suppliers or the producer crude supplier, where do you get the dollars from? Dollars is currently scarce in Nigeria. So we have advocated that, look, we don't need to put further pressure on the market that is already scarce with USD. So rather, we advocate that government, I know it's not explicitly stated in the PIA that crude should be paid in Naira. I mean, it's left for negotiation between the supplier and the offtaker and the buyer. But we think that for products that are produced and sold into Nigeria, it should be explicitly said that, or promulgated, that crude should be sold in Naira to such refiners. Meanwhile, if you are exporting, the portion that you are exporting, you should also pay it in US dollars. This is what we have advocated for, and we think that will solve some of the problems that we're having. Because, I mean, otherwise you keep having a situation where pricing is modulated in the oil and gas industry, or sorry, in the refining industry.
Well, I don't know whether the call you're making as lauded by your association, given the NUPRC's position for supply of crude to modular refineries, whether the NCDMB is also involved in all of this. But my question would be, if there's a failure to comply with this enforcement law, according to the regulators, are the regulators doing enough to protect these modular refineries? Because we're talking local content here. It has to be encouraged.
Anyway, we haven't seen NCDMB playing the local content father, quote and unquote, that they are supposed to be. I think they are also supposed to be the driver of this local initiative, because most of the refineries or private refineries that are owned in Nigeria today are owned by Nigerians and by locals. And one of the things I always say is that we in OPAC, we actually build our refinery in Nigeria locally. All of the aspects of our fabrication and installation of the refinery was done in Nigeria. We have not gotten the kind of support that we thought we should get. I think in this aspect of our local initiative, I think that NCDMB should up their game.
Well, I think it's also a no-brainer, because we've said that goods should not be priced in dollars in Nigeria. In fact, they had to lock stores that were pricing in yuan and the rest. So I think it's a no-brainer. You should naturally get Nigeria's crude in Naira if you want to do business in Nigeria, if it's being sold in Nigeria. So that should be reiterated. But I was looking at the figures, and this is a part I'd like you to speak to, because if you're proposing a solution, then we need to picture it appropriately. Maybe we can sell it better to the government and to the people, get the people on board. So I'd like you to speak to the joint capacity of the modular refineries we have in Nigeria. I mean, we know for Dangote refinery, 650,000 barrels per day. We know for Port Harcourt, 210, even though it's I think 60 for the old and 150 for the new. I think they're talking about increasing it by another 100. So if we do that multiplication, 650 plus, let's say, even if we're looking at the 60 for the old refinery, the first part of the Port Harcourt refinery, add it together, multiply it by what you get, and I'm doing this figure, don't let me lose you here. From what you get from 1 barrel of crude, the petrol you get from 1 barrel of crude, I think they say 73 liters of petrol is what you get from that. I think it will cover our daily consumption in Nigeria, which is over 40-something million liters per day, according to the authorities. So tell us about your own joint capacity and how much you think you can price petrol if all of these things were to work out for you in terms of selling crude, getting all of the support you need as a local manufacturer.
Okay, thank you for that again. For me, what today, I mean, understand that CORAN actually is not about modular refinery. I think I need to make that clarification. Dangote is also part of the Crude Owners Association, Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria. And specifically speaking to modular refinery, I think we have about 27,000 barrels per day installed capacity in Nigeria today. I could mention some of the capacity we have today. Our own refinery, OPAC, is a 10,000 barrel per day refinery. Our intent was to scale it up to 60,000 barrels over a period of time if we're not experiencing the frustration we have experienced in the last 3 years or so that we have come on stream. Watersmith has 5,000 barrels per day, and I think they are looking to scale that up to 10,000 barrels in the nearest future. Aradec currently has about 11,000 barrels per day, and Edo refinery has about 1,000 barrels per day producing. I think they are scaling that up also to about 5,000 or 6,000. I think this combined capacity would have also helped to, alleviate the supply of petroleum products into Nigeria if we were getting the feedstock as we have been advocating for. And when you talk about the volume and what comes out from every crude, I mean, this depends on the crude asset. You cannot, every crude is not, crude are not homogeneous. They are different in the way they produce product, in different constituents of product. So it all depends on the crude asset you are putting into the refinery. That is what will give you your yield and all of that. So I may not be able to speak to tell you this is what you must get from every crude that you put into the refinery. But however, the good thing about modular refinery and why we are also advocating for a lot of modular refineries to be installed in Nigeria is that these are refineries you can just put at the wellhead. The logistic, most of the logistic costs and all of that will be eliminated. In our case, for example, we are located in a cluster where they are producing about 40 to 60,000 barrels per day of crude, and they are taking it to Forcados or to Brass Terminal. Our intention was that if that crude, since we are just in that cluster, all the pipeline in that cluster are less than 2 to 3 kilometers away from our refinery. If this comes into our refinery, what would have easily been done is we refine this product and we'll put it into the market. So you extinguish most of the logistic costs that we're talking about today, whether vessel costs, inspection costs, and several other costs. I mean, custom costs, a whole lot of costs. And what that will accumulate to is a cheaper petroleum, is a cheaper petroleum product for Nigerians. And this is how we see it.
Sir, this would be the good time to revisit the first part of my earlier question, which is your request that the federal government intervenes in the sector that's, that part of the oil industry where modular refineries operate with $100 million such that you can increase your capacity to also produce petrol. What's the disposition of the federal government towards this? And what are the guarantees for turnover should the federal government intervene in the sector with this huge amount?
Okay, I think before this new government in Nigeria, in the past government, what we did, we had, I think, a ministerial committee was set up then by the then Minister of State Petroleum, where we interacted severally with the PAMSEC office and the ministry, and I think it was also made up of the central bank and other government institutions. We interacted, and I think there was a communique where we agreed that about between $1.5 billion to $2 billion intervention fund should be set up for this sector. Because if you go out there today, getting funding for oil and gas projects are usually very difficult. So if that fund was created, and we that have proven record in this field, we said, okay, we could access such fund to expand either our capacity or to build on some of the challenges we're having. Like today, we're talking about PMS and all of that. Our thought was that if such funds was available, we can catch in on such funds to be able to expand our capacity or produce PMS, which is what is currently scarce in Nigeria. So we still think that this government or the current Minister of State or Minister of Petroleum, I think the president is supposed to be the Minister of Petroleum, could bring us back to the talking table again and see how they can actually intervene in this very important sector of not just Nigeria, even of the world, because if we are net producers of petroleum products, what's going to happen is that we not then become exporters of refined petroleum products.
Well, I just wanted to get clarity on the pricing, because you said it would be much cheaper. So now we're buying it 600, 700, black market has 1,000 and above. What is the target you're looking at? Because again, this will help us push that conversation further. If we know that these are the gains, then it should be a no-brainer. So what pricing are you looking at?
You see, I can't sit here to give you a price to say this is what it will sell for, because, you know, I always tell people that refining has its own economics. At every point in time, it will all depends on what the international crude oil is doing, because the product we buy, remember, we don't produce the crude. The people who are selling crude to us always benchmark international price. It depends on what international market price is doing. But one thing I'm very sure of is that the logistics around importation of products and all of that would obviously go away, and that will make the product cheaper than it would have been if most of the constituents of the crude that are coming in, will make all the constituents of the crude cheaper. Okay. And another thing you need to also understand is that refining can trigger a lot of would have more ripple effect. For example, petrochemical.
Mr. Yoriko, we have to anchor at this point, but I know that this is by no means the end of the conversation. I know that they're saying if Dangote begins petrol, it might be around 500 and the rest. So perhaps that's the goal, because if we're buying it for 600, lesser should be 500. But again, we'll see how this plays out. Chairman, Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria, CORAN, also Chairman, OPEC Refinery, Mr. Momo Oyarika, I would like to thank you so much for your time, and we wish you the very best.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it. We're still troubleshooting all of that sector. But in the meantime, let's give you something to cheer. And we have joining us someone who will definitely make you smile, whether you like it or not. Stay with us right here on The Morning Brief.